Get out! Tobias Amati pointed at the exit, his voice echoing through the conference room. 40 shareholders and family members stared at me like I was a criminal. My suitcase hit the floor with a thud that made my heart stop. Security guards moved toward me, their footsteps loud against the marble. You're disinherited, my father announced, his face twisted with rage. And I'll make sure every company in this industry knows you're incompetent. The room went silent. My throat felt like sandpaper. I looked at my mother, but she stared at her lap. My cousin Marcus smirked from the corner. Nobody defended me. Nobody even looked sorry. This was my father's doing, public humiliation for refusing to implement his outdated business plan. I was 26 years old, and the man who raised me just destroyed me in front of everyone who mattered. As security grabbed my arm, I made myself a promise. He would regret this moment. Every single word. Every single witness. I would make sure of it. The studio apartment was smaller than my old bedroom. One desk sat in the corner under a flickering light bulb. One laptop. One chair. The walls were thin enough that I could hear my neighbor's television through the drywall. I unpacked my suitcase slowly, my hands shaking with anger more than sadness. This was rock bottom. But rock bottom had one advantage, nowhere to go but up. I opened my laptop and created a new folder, Fluxline Solutions. The name felt right. Fluid, flexible. Everything my father's rigid company wasn't. I started sketching the automation software I'd been designing in secret for months. The same software Tobias had called childish nonsense when I tried to present it. My phone buzzed with messages from old contacts. Heard what happened. Your dad says you'll fail within a month. I smiled at the screen. Let him think that. Let everyone think that. While they were busy gossiping, I would be busy building. The coffee shop was neutral ground for my first potential client meeting. Harrison Briggs owned a mid-sized logistics company that desperately needed better inventory systems. I prepared my pitch for weeks, but when I sat down across from him, his expression was already cold. Look, Kaya, Harrison said, stirring his coffee slowly. I've heard some concerning things about your stability. My stomach dropped. What things? Your father reached out personally. He said you had a breakdown, that you stole company ideas and tried to pass them as your own. The lie was so smooth it almost sounded believable. I felt my face flush with anger, but I forced myself to stay calm. Mr. Briggs, I recorded this entire conversation on my phone. Would you like to hear what you just said about stolen ideas? Because I have documentation proving every line of code I've written is original. His eyes widened slightly. I hadn't actually recorded anything, but the bluff worked. I should probably look at your proposal more carefully. I left the coffee shop with a maybe instead of a no. It wasn't much, but it was something. My father's voicemails filled my phone like poison. Kaya, you're being stubborn. Without me, you'll starve. Nobody will work with you. I've made sure of that. This tantrum of yours is embarrassing. Come home and apologize. I listened to each message 3 times, taking notes. His story kept changing. In one voicemail, he claimed I'd stolen company secrets. In another, he said I was too inexperienced to understand business. In the third, he insisted he was only trying to protect me from failure. The contradictions were beautiful. I organized everything into a spreadsheet with timestamps and exact quotes. Then I checked my email and found something even better, a forwarded internal memo from an anonymous sender. The subject line read, "Thought you should see this." Inside was a document from 6 months ago. Tobias Amati had presented my automation concept to his board as his own idea. They rejected it as too experimental. Now he was claiming I'd stolen from him. The irony was delicious. I saved 3 backup copies immediately. Harrison Briggs called me back 2 days later. I looked at your proposal again, he said, and I checked your references independently, not through your father's network. My heart raced. And I want to try your prototype. Small scale. If it works like you say it does, we'll expand. I closed my eyes and exhaled. You won't regret this. The prototype installation took 3 days. I barely slept, surviving on energy drinks and determination. Harrison's team was skeptical at first, but when they saw the automation handle inventory tracking in real time, their attitudes shifted. This is exactly what we needed, Harrison admitted. Your father called this child's play? He called it a lot of things, I replied. None of them complimentary. Harrison shook his head. His loss. Those 2 words felt like winning the lottery. My first client. My first proof that Tobias Amati was wrong about me. I walked back to my apartment that night feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Power. The knock on my apartment door came at 8 in the morning. I opened it to find my father standing there in his expensive suit, his expression carefully neutral. Kaya, we need to talk. No, we don't. I tried to close the door, but he pushed inside. I'm still your father. Show some respect. My neighbors were watching through their doorways. Tobias knew exactly what he was doing, creating another public scene. I heard you're working with Harrison Briggs, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Did you tell him about your history of instability? Did you mention that you've never completed a single project without my guidance? My phone was already recording in my pocket. You mean the projects you claimed credit for? Careful, Kaya. I still have influence in this industry. I can make one phone call and destroy any deal you're trying to build. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Unless you come back, apologize, and work under my supervision like you should have from the beginning. I smiled at him. Get out of my apartment. His face reddened, but he left. The recording was crystal clear. ArcLight Systems was Tobias's biggest competitor. 4 years, they'd been trying to break into the automation market, but couldn't match my father's legacy systems. I'd been studying their weaknesses for months. Now I had something they needed. I sent a carefully worded email to their director of innovation. I have a solution that could revolutionize your entire supply chain management. It's already been successfully deployed with a satisfied client. Are you interested in a conversation? The response came in 3 hours. Very interested. Can you come to our headquarters next Tuesday? I showed up with my prototype, my documentation, and my best professional demeanor. The ArcLight team was younger than Tobias's, hungrier. They didn't care about corporate politics or family drama. They cared about results. This is impressive, their director said, clicking through my presentation. How soon could you scale this? With the right resources, 3 months for full integration. And your father's company uses a system designed 15 years ago. Good for its time, but inflexible. Mine adapts in real time. They exchange glances. We'd like to schedule a full board presentation. I should have known Marcus would betray me. My cousin had always been loyal to Tobias, always competing for his approval. When I mentioned my ArcLight meeting to him in what I thought was confidence, I was naive. 2 days later, my father appeared at a tech conference where I was networking. Ladies and gentlemen, Tobias announced to the small crowd, my daughter is here. The one who thinks she can run a business with 3 months of experience. The room went quiet. People stared. Kaya believes she's invented something revolutionary, he continued, his voice dripping with condescension. But she's always been naive. Good intentions, poor execution. I'm sure you'll all be very patient with her learning curve. Humiliation burned through me, but I kept my face neutral. I noted every person who laughed, every person who looked uncomfortable, every person who seemed sympathetic. Then I noticed something interesting. One of Tobias's own executives, a woman named Victoria Hayes, wasn't laughing. She was watching my father with barely concealed disgust. After the conference, I found her in the parking lot. That was unprofessional of him, Victoria said quietly. It's been happening my whole life. She hesitated, then handed me her card. Call me if you ever need perspective on how things really work at Amati Industries. The shipment of servers I'd ordered for the ArcLight demo was supposed to arrive Monday morning. Monday came and went. Then Tuesday. When I called the vendor, they were apologetic but vague. There was a payment issue. I have the confirmation right here. Payment cleared a week ago. Well, there's a flag on your account now. Someone reported fraud. I knew immediately. Tobias had contacts everywhere, including at my vendor. He deliberately sabotaged my delivery to make me look unreliable to ArcLight. I spent 6 hours on the phone, escalating through management levels until I reached someone who would listen. I need you to pull the communication logs, I insisted. Someone called pretending to have authority over my account. That's fraud, and I'm prepared to pursue legal action. The vendor's legal department got involved. Within 2 hours, they traced the interference back to a shell account connected to Amati Industries. The shipment was expedited with profuse apologies. But more importantly, I had documentation of attempted sabotage. Every piece of evidence was another nail in Tobias's credibility. The headline appeared in Tech Daily. Amadi's daughter faces financial instability amid failed startup attempt. The article was short, vicious, and entirely fabricated. It claimed I'd missed multiple payments, defaulted on contracts, and was operating without proper business licenses. Every single statement was a lie. I spent an hour drafting my response, then posted it across every platform. Tobias Amadi has initiated a coordinated smear campaign because I refuse to work under his control. I have documentation proving every claim in this article is false, including records of his attempts to sabotage my vendor relationships and intimidate my clients. This isn't business, it's abuse. I attached screenshots of his threatening voicemails, the vendor interference investigation, and Harrison Briggs's testimonial praising my work. The response was immediate. Tech forums exploded with discussions. People who'd worked with Tobias started sharing their own stories of his manipulation tactics. Within 12 hours, 3 journalists had contacted me for interviews. Tech Daily issued a retraction. And suddenly, investors weren't calling Tobias for references anymore. They were questioning why he was so threatened by his own daughter's success. Victoria Hayes met me at a quiet restaurant outside the city. She looked nervous, constantly checking her phone. "I shouldn't be doing this," she said, sliding a folder across the table. "But what your father is doing isn't right." Inside was an internal company memo dated 3 weeks ago. Tobias was planning to push through a merger with a struggling manufacturing company without full board approval. The deal would personally enrich him but put Amadi Industries at serious financial risk. "He's been hiding the real numbers," Victoria explained. "The company he wants to merge with is drowning in debt. If this goes through, it could destroy everything." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I've worked at Amadi Industries for 12 years. I've watched him take credit for other people's ideas, bully anyone who disagrees with him, and manipulate the board into blind loyalty. What he did to you at that conference was the final straw." I studied the documents carefully. This wasn't just ammunition, this was a nuclear option. If this information became public, it would force the board to investigate. They might even remove him. The tech summit was my chance to shift the narrative. Tobias was scheduled to speak about maintaining market leadership. I was scheduled immediately after him to discuss innovative solutions for emerging businesses. When Tobias took the stage, he was confident, polished. He talked about Amadi Industries' long history, their established client base, their proven systems. Then he made his mistake. "Some people, especially young people, think innovation means abandoning everything that works," he said, looking directly at me in the front row. "They chase trends without understanding fundamentals. They lack the wisdom that comes with experience." I waited for him to finish, then took the stage. "My father is right that experience matters," I said calmly. "But experience without adaptation becomes stubbornness. The market doesn't care about your legacy if you can't solve today's problems." I presented my prototype's results with Harrison Briggs, showing a 40% efficiency improvement over traditional systems. The audience leaned forward. "Within 6 months, this technology will change how supply chains operate. Not because it's trendy, but because it works." After the presentation, people swarmed me with questions. And in the back of the room, I noticed the CEO of ArcLight Systems taking notes. The ArcLight acquisition offer came by formal letter. They wanted to purchase Fluxline Solutions outright, integrate the technology into their entire platform, and hire me as Director of Innovation. The number they offered was more money than I'd ever imagined having. I read the letter 3 times, my hands shaking. This was it, the validation I'd been fighting for. Proof that my ideas weren't childish or naive. I called my lawyer to review the contract, then scheduled a meeting with ArcLight's board. The negotiations took 2 weeks. I insisted on maintaining creative control over my technology and having a seat in strategic planning meetings. They agreed to everything. When I finally signed the papers, I felt a weight lift from my chest that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. Tobias heard about the deal within hours. His voicemail was pure rage. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life. I will crush you before you can sell a single unit. You're playing in a game you don't understand, little girl." I saved the voicemail. Then I sent a copy to ArcLight's legal team with a note for the harassment file. Late that night, alone in my apartment, the reality hit me. I sat on the floor with my laptop, scrolling through old photos. Pictures of my father teaching me to ride a bike. Pictures of family dinners before everything fell apart. Pictures of a time when I believed he was proud of me. The tears came hard and ugly. I'd spent months channeling my anger into productivity, into building something that would prove him wrong. But underneath the anger was grief. I'd lost my father, not to death, but to his own ego and cruelty. I opened a new document and started writing. Not a business plan this time, but a strategy map. Every vulnerable point in Tobias's business model. Every outdated system. Every client relationship that could be disrupted with better technology. If he wanted war, I would give him war. But it would be precise, legal, and absolutely devastating. I outlined 3 phases: destabilize his market position, expose his mismanagement, and watch his empire crumble under the weight of his own mistakes. By sunrise, I had a complete battle plan. Victoria Hayes became my inside source. She fed me information carefully, always through encrypted channels, always with plausible deniability. Board meeting minutes, client complaints, financial projections that didn't match public statements. He's losing clients, Victoria told me during one of our secret meetings. 3 major accounts have asked for proposal reviews. They're shopping around. Because of ArcLight's new capabilities. Because of your new capabilities. You're the one driving innovation now. He's just managing decline. The information she provided was invaluable, but more importantly, it revealed a pattern. Tobias made decisions based on ego, not data. He dismissed threats until they became crises. He surrounded himself with yes men who never challenged his assumptions. These weren't just weaknesses. They were predictable vulnerabilities I could exploit. The board is getting nervous, Victoria added. Investors are asking questions he can't answer. Why is ArcLight suddenly gaining market share? Why is his daughter publicly outperforming him? Why does he seem more focused on revenge than innovation? Good, I said. Let them ask. Tobias announced his revolutionary new product at a press conference I watched online. It was a crude copy of my automation system, stripped down and hastily assembled. He claimed it was the result of years of research and development. The presentation was overconfident, dismissive of competitors, and technically shallow. Within hours, tech reviewers were tearing it apart. Amati's new system appears to be a rushed response to ArcLight's recent innovations. The interface is clunky, and the automation features are limited. This feels like vaporware designed to maintain market perception rather than solve actual problems. I sent a single email to ArcLight's CEO. Attached is the patent filing for my original automation system, dated 8 months before today's announcement. Also attached are the internal memos where Tobias Amati rejected this exact concept as childish. Make of that what you will. ArcLight's legal team issued a statement within the day. We are reviewing potential intellectual property violations and reserve all rights to protect our innovations. The press had a field day. Tobias's attempt to reclaim dominance had backfired spectacularly. His stock price dropped 6% in a single afternoon. The video message arrived via email with no subject line. I almost deleted it as spam, but something made me click. Tobias's face filled my screen, sitting in his office, looking directly at the camera. Kaya, you need to understand something. Everything you've accomplished, every client, every deal, every bit of recognition, it's all temporary. You're riding a wave of sympathy and novelty. But when that wears off, you'll be exactly what I always said you were. Inexperienced, naive, and in over your head. He leaned closer to the camera. Your little partnership with ArcLight, it will fail. Your technology, someone will build it better. Your reputation, I'm just getting started destroying it. You should have stayed home, worked under my guidance, and learned your place. The video ended. I watched it twice more, analyzing every word, every gesture, every tell. He was scared, truly scared for the first time. This wasn't confidence. It was desperation dressed up as authority. I saved the video, backed it up to 3 different drives, and drafted my response. Not to him, to the market. I would make him look incompetent in front of every investor who still believed in him. The acquisition announcement went live at 9 in the morning. ArcLight Systems acquires Fluxline Solutions in strategic innovation partnership. The press release detailed my technology, my role as Director of Innovation, and ArcLight's aggressive expansion into markets currently dominated by legacy systems. My phone exploded with notifications, congratulations from clients, interview requests from journalists, and one furious call from Tobias that I sent straight to voicemail. By noon, ArcLight stock had risen 4%. Amati Industries stock had dropped 3%. The market was making its judgment clear. At ArcLight's headquarters, I was introduced to the full executive team. They treated me like a colleague, not a child. They asked for my input on strategic decisions. They valued my expertise. Everything my father had refused to give me, I'd found somewhere else. Your father's board is an emergency session, ArcLight's CEO mentioned casually. Word is they're very unhappy about losing ground to us, especially since you're the one driving it. Good, I replied. Maybe they'll finally start asking the right questions about his leadership. The CEO smiled. That's exactly what we're counting on. The boardroom presentation was my idea. ArcLight's leadership team gathered to review market analysis, and I'd volunteered to lead the discussion. I pulled up a detailed report showing market share shifts over the past 6 months. Amati Industries has lost 8% of their client base since January, I explained, highlighting the graph. 3 major accounts have switched to our platform. 5 more are in active negotiations. Why the sudden shift? One board member asked. Because they're using 15-year-old technology managed by a CEO more interested in controlling his daughter than innovating his product. Their response time to market changes is slow. Their customer service is declining. And their leadership is distracted. I clicked to the next slide. Here's where it gets interesting. Tobias Amati has made 3 public statements in the past month attacking me personally instead of addressing his company's structural problems. Each statement has corresponded with a drop in investor confidence. The room was silent. So you're saying? I'm saying that his obsession with defeating me is actively destroying his own company. And we can accelerate that process by simply continuing to outperform him. The Tech Vision interview was broadcast live. The journalist, Amanda Pierce, was known for asking difficult questions. Kaya Amati, you've become one of the most talked about figures in tech innovation. But you're also Tobias Amati's daughter. How do you respond to claims that you're only successful because of his name recognition? I prepared for this question. I respond by pointing to results. My technology has been independently tested and validated. My clients have seen measurable improvements. And the market has voted with their investments. If my father's name opened doors, my work is what kept them open. Your father has suggested you're inexperienced and that your success is temporary. What do you say to that? I say that experience without innovation is just stubbornness with a resume. The industry is changing, and leaders who refuse to adapt will be left behind. That's not an attack on my father, it's just reality. The interview clip went viral. Tech forums praised my composure. Industry leaders called it a masterclass in professional restraint. And the headlines the next day read, Next generation leader emerges while legacy systems struggle. Tobias's company lost another 2 executives that week, both citing strategic differences with leadership. The hostile takeover attempt was predictable. Tobias tried to use his remaining influence to convince ArcLight's major shareholders to sell to him, effectively putting him back in control of my technology. He offered premiums above market value, made promises about synergies and market dominance. It was a desperate play, and it showed. I'd anticipated this move months ago. When I'd negotiated my acquisition contract with ArcLight, I'd insisted on specific clauses protecting against exactly this kind of maneuver. Poison pill provisions, voting rights restrictions, technology licensing agreements that would terminate if ownership changed hands without my approval. ArcLight's legal team activated every defense. They filed injunctions. They publicized Tobias's documented harassment and sabotage attempts. They made it clear that any hostile takeover would result in losing the very technology that made the acquisition valuable. Within 72 hours, shareholders had rejected his offer. The business press called it a humiliating defeat for the veteran CEO. More importantly, it revealed how little support Tobias actually had when his authority was challenged. His board was furious, his investors were nervous, and his reputation as an untouchable industry titan was crumbling. The emergency board meeting at Amati Industries wasn't public, but Victoria Hayes made sure I knew every detail. "They're calling for his resignation," she whispered over our encrypted call. 3 board members have formally requested a leadership review. What's his response? Denial, aggression, blame shifting. He's claiming you've orchestrated some kind of conspiracy against him. That ArcLight is engaged in corporate espionage. That the media is biased. In other words, he's making it worse. So much worse. One of his oldest investors stood up and said, "Maybe the problem isn't your daughter. Maybe the problem is that you're so obsessed with defeating her that you've forgotten how to run your company." I allowed myself a small smile. That must have hurt. His face went purple. Security almost had to intervene. Over the next week, 3 more executives resigned from Amati Industries. 2 of them immediately joined ArcLight. The brain drain was accelerating, and everyone knew why. Nobody wanted to work for a man who valued control over competence, ego over innovation. The empire my father had built over 30 years was collapsing, not because I destroyed it, but because he'd hollowed it out himself. The final board meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. I wasn't supposed to be there, but Victoria Hayes had given me a visitor's pass disguised as a consultant review. I sat in the observation gallery, watching through the glass as Tobias faced his board. They'd asked me to present the evidence publicly, but I declined. This wasn't about my revenge anymore. This was about accountability. One by one, board members raised their concerns. The failed product launch, the declining market share, the public relations disasters, the harassment campaign against me that had opened the company to legal liability. Tobias tried to defend himself, but his arguments were weak. He blamed market conditions, disloyal employees, unfair competition. Never once did he accept responsibility. Then the lead investor stood up. "Tobias, I've known you for 20 years. I've watched you build this company into an industry leader. But I've also watched you spend the last 6 months destroying everything you built because you couldn't accept that your daughter had a better idea. This isn't leadership. This is self-destruction." The vote was called. Tobias Amati was removed as CEO, effective immediately. His shares were frozen pending investigation into potential misconduct. He stood there, silent, as security approached. I watched from the observation gallery as security escorted my father out of his own building. He walked past the conference rooms where he'd made millions in deals, past the office where he'd humiliated me 6 months ago, past the employees who no longer met his eyes. For a moment, I thought I'd feel triumph. Instead, I felt something more complicated. Relief mixed with sadness. Justice mixed with grief. I'd spent half a year proving I didn't need him, that I could succeed despite his sabotage. And I had. But the cost was the complete destruction of the man who'd once taught me to ride a bike. When I left the building, a former investor approached me in the parking lot. "Ms. Amati, I'm Preston Joe. I want to discuss a major partnership opportunity with ArcLight." "I'm listening." "Your father once turned down a collaboration with my firm because he didn't want to share credit. But I've been watching your approach, collaborative, innovative, ego-free. That's the kind of leadership we want to support. Let's talk about a $50 million investment in your expansion." I shook his hand, feeling the weight of validation settle over me like a crown. This was it. Full recognition, full authority, full respect. 3 months later, I stood in ArcLight's expanded headquarters, overseeing the integration of Fluxline technology across their entire platform. The market had responded exactly as I'd predicted. Companies that once swore loyalty to Amati Industries were switching to our superior systems. Tobias's former company had been bought by a private equity firm and broken into parts. The name, Amati Industries, no longer existed. I'd won, not through sabotage or lies, but through being better, working harder, and refusing to be controlled. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "I hope you're proud of yourself." I recognized Tobias's tone immediately. I typed back, "I am. I hope someday you understand that this wasn't about destroying you. It was about refusing to be destroyed by you." He didn't respond. I closed my laptop and looked out over the city. For 26 years, I'd lived in my father's shadow, measuring myself against his expectations, accepting his version of my capabilities. He'd wanted me to obey, to be small, to fit into the box he designed. Instead, I'd chosen to rise. The empire he tried to deny me, I'd built myself. Better, stronger, and entirely on my own terms. Please do well to follow me, because I have more to tell you. Revenge Hood is saying thank you.